Hi everyone, and welcome back to lesson 11, vertex formed by completing the square. So our focus question today is, what is the purpose of completing the square? Our learning goals are something that we did in last lesson. I can factor a quadratic by completing the square. And today we're going to be able to identify the vertex in vertex form, which vertex form is basically the form when you factor by completing the square. So we're going to take a look at what that looks like. So just to review, we have this example, and we're going to factor by completing the square. And I have on the right-hand side here the steps. So you can follow along with me as I do it. So first, we're going to divide the b value by 2. So here, just make sure you look, our b value is negative 12. So we're going to take negative 12 and divide it by 2, which is negative 6. Okay, that was step 1. Step 2, we're going to square that number, which becomes our new c value. We're going to add that to the bx term. So I'm going to take negative 6. And remember, when you're using your calculator, put that negative 6 inside the parentheses and square it, which is going to give you positive 36. Okay? All right. Number 3, we're going to rewrite the equation. So we're going to leave our x squared as it was, minus 12x. And here, we're going to add our new c value, which is the 36. Write our old c value, which was 11. And remember, we have to subtract it because you can't just add a random number. Okay, and I'm just going to attach that equals 0 at the ends. Okay, step 4. You want to combine the first 3 terms into a binomial squared. So remember, we're going to factor our first 3 terms. Okay, because now we have this new c value so that we can factor. Okay, so remember, you're going to use the number that you got when you divided the b by 2, because if I just pull over here, x squared minus 12x plus 36, x minus 6 times x minus 6 is the factor form, because when you add them, you get negative 12, and when you multiply them, you get positive 36. So this b is also written as x minus 6 squared, which is what the binomial squared means, because it's 2 terms, and it's raised to the second power. Okay, so this is going to be written as x minus 6 squared. And now we're going to combine, this is step 5. So I'm going to write this 4/5. We're going to combine the last 2 terms and tack it onto the end of the binomial. So 11 minus 36, and that is negative 25. So now we have our factored form here. So we now essentially factored by completing the square. And that would be our what's called vertex form. And we're going to see why this is the vertex form in a moment. Okay, so just moving on here. So why complete the square? So completing the square is a way for us to also figure out the vertex algebraically. So if we look here, so just again, I have the graph of our function of x squared. So this is the graph of x squared minus 12x minus plus 11. So this is this graph. And if you look here, I took a picture of it in Desmos. And what do we notice about the vertex point here? So the vertex here is 6, negative 25. So if you want, you can go into desmos.com and graph it for yourself and zoom out so you can see the vertex. So our vertex is 6, negative 25. So again, just to refresh your memory, the vertex is the maximum or minimum point of the parabola. So we saw we see here that our vertex for this example is 6, comma, negative 25. Now, I'm going to just scroll up and write down our factored form here from when we completed the square. So we saw when we factor this by completing the square, we get x minus 6 squared minus 25 equals to 0. So this is our factored form. So I hope you're kind of seeing a connection. And the reason why completing the square is useful is because when you factor by completing the square, the value inside the binomial squared is your x value of the vertex, and the value outside of your binomial squared is the y value, okay? So the vertex form is developed when you complete the square, okay? So we're going to go into the next page, and I have a little image to show you. Any day now. Now it's not responding. Okay. All right. So here we have standard form, which we've been using in factoring to find the solutions. We use the vertex formula. The axis of symmetry formula. X equals negative b over 2a, which is the axis of symmetry. Right? So we've done a bunch of things using standard form. And now, vertex form looks like this. When you have a binomial squared, you might have a value in front, usually not in Algebra 1, plus the value. So the h, the number that's inside the binomial, is going to be your x value of your vertex, and the number outside of your binomial squared is going to be your y value, okay? So, and again, you get vertex form by completing the square. My handwriting is terrible today. Okay, so let's just do one more example together. So here, we're going to do 3 things. First, we're going to find the axis symmetry. We're going to get the coordinates of the vertex, and then we're going to factor by completing the square. So we're going to do 3 things with this today. Okay, so remember, axis of symmetry formula is x equals negative b over 2a. Okay, so here we have our function x squared minus 8x plus 5. So for our axis of symmetry, we need our b value, which is negative 8, and our a value, which is the number in front of x squared, which is 1. So we know it's x equals negative b. So here our b is negative 8. So I'm going to put that in parentheses because we have 2 negatives here, which we know should become a positive, over 2 times a, which is 1. So this becomes negative times negative, that becomes positive 8, over 2 times 1 is 2, which is 4. So our axis of symmetry is 4. Okay, that's the equation of the axis of symmetry. So we know the axis of symmetry goes through the vertex point. Okay, so now that means this x value is the x value of the vertex. So we just need to figure out what the y value is. So we know our function is f of x equals x squared minus 8x plus 5. So we just want to know what the output is, our y value. So I'm just going to substitute 4 into the function. So f of 4 equals to 4 squared minus 8 times 4 plus 5. And I'm just going to put this whole thing in my calculator. But if you were to break it down, 4 to the second power is 16. Negative 8 times 4 is negative 32. And then plus 5. So we know when f is 4, just do this in the calculator. So 16 minus 32 plus 5 is negative 11. Okay, so this means our vertex is 4, negative 11. All right, so now what I showed you before is when we factor by completing the square, those two values, the number inside the binomial and the one outside, are the values of the vertex. So we're going to factor by completing the square. So I'm going to just rewrite our trinomial here. Okay, so first thing we do is we divide the b by 2. So negative 8 over 2 is negative 4. Okay, and then we square that number, and that becomes positive 16. So this is our new c value. So we're going to write this out. So we have our original x squared minus 8x. Now we're going to add our 16, our new c, so we complete the square. Then we have our old c value. We have the plus 5. And we're going to subtract the 16. Okay. Next thing we do is we combine the first, we factor the first 3 terms, and it becomes a binomial squared. So remember, use the number that we got the b divided by 2 in your binomial squared. So this is x minus 4 squared, because negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16, and negative 4 plus negative 4 is negative 8. Then lastly, we just combine the last 2 terms on the outside, and 5 minus 16 is negative 11. Okay, so now, as you can see, when we factored by completing the square, this 4 is the x value of our vertex, and this negative 11 is our y value. So this is why it's called vertex form. Okay? All right, so basically vertex form, you're just identifying the x value. We know that's 4. And then negative 11 is our y, which we saw when we did it algebraically before. You could also graph it in order to confirm. And this is it for today's lesson. Please email me if you have any questions.